Hi everyone, what I thought we'd do today is have a little look at responding to primary sources without doing any drawing. Recently you've been tasked with doing lots of different drawing based experiments around natural forms and things you found in your garden. What I thought I'd do today is just experiment with some little things that I've collected, from bits of bamboo to rosemary to other twigs and grasses, and look at different ways in which we can document them, record them and use them to develop ideas. The first thing that I thought we'd do is have a little look at photographing our objects. Here I've got a very simple setup. It's just a piece of A2 paper I've propped up against a chair off the side of my table. I've got quite a strong light source in my kitchen where I'm taking the picture, coming from the doors to the right. So I'm trying to just balance this light out. I've propped up a little light on the left hand side. I've got a little portable studio light, but you could just use an LED lamp or just a regular lamp, something like that, to try and create a nice even lighting. What we can find is if we've got a really strong light source from one side of the page and darkness on the other, it does make the object and the whole frame itself have a kind of light side and a dark side. And when it comes to kind of removing the white background from around it, when we might want to use our objects for creating patterns and those sorts of things, it can become a little bit more challenging. So for this, do try and create a nice even light. You might try and create some shadows and things off them, but the more even light you can create, the better. When photographing your different objects, it really is worth trying to photograph it from several different angles. Try and photograph each thing a few different times. Look at it from the underside, look at it from a lower angle. The more different variety you get in there, the better. Do try and get out and about with your camera as well. I went for a short walk the other day and I took my camera with me. I took these on a DSLR with a kind of large aperture lens, but equally you can use your phone. If you've got a portrait mode, try using it. It's really nice to get this depth of field wherever possible, with sharp, crisp object in the foreground with a blurred out background behind. Look for interesting forms. Nature does so much work for you in the design process. Try and look for examples of things that are healthy and living, things that might be starting to die off, along with also looking at things as they start to die, because these transformations are fascinating as a designer. Next, why not experiment with taking some rubbings? Here I'm just placing a piece of A4 thin white paper over the top of a bit of bamboo that I took from the garden. Apologies that my hands are not moving in time with how I'm speaking. I missed the recordio on the first version. But just try using a piece of charcoal or a piece of graphite. You can take the lead out of a pencil and try rubbing over the top of some of the forms. It's a really nice way of taking some quick impressions. You could equally use a crayon or something like that. You'll find that some of your experiments will work really well and others won't so much. But be playful, give it a go. Here I'm just using a bit of pencil lead, trying to see the differences in the drawings. I'm finding that I'm getting much finer, softer lines and actually able to pick up some of the details. What I did find through some of the experiments is using a smaller piece the better, and trying to go in a range of different directions so that you can pick up as much detail as possible. What I recommend you do is do the same one over and over again until you start getting a feel for it. So I know now from doing this one once, twice before, where some of the forms are within it. You can also take a little peek underneath if you're looking for where some of the lines are, or just give it a little feel and just try and capture some of those beautiful details that you'll find within these natural forms. So I haven't done any perfectly yet, I don't think. But the really nice thing about this is you can create quite expressive shapes. And you can even start going in when you're feeling confident and start drawing in some little bits, adding in some further details and your own interpretations. It doesn't have to just be a perfect rubbing. You're trying to just find the essence of what you're looking at. I had some fairly mixed results. Some of the things I thought worked quite well, others not so well. But I think it's worth remembering you can go in with a rubber, clean things up a little bit, or alternatively bring things into Photoshop later. It's amazing what you can do in post-production. Next, I found these ancient watercolours in my house the other day, and I thought I might just see if there's a way in which I can transfer some pigment from some of these leaves and the stem and things and transfer it onto paper, so we almost get a print from it. Now, because the leaf is non-absorbent, obviously it doesn't want to soak up water, the ink doesn't stay on it terribly well, but what it might do is give me quite a mottled effect. I'm not entirely sure, but I thought I'd just experiment, find out what happens. The ink might disperse a little bit if I push it onto the paper. So now I'll just rub over with my hand and see what I can pick up from those leaves that I added a bit of paint onto. Actually, even just pressing the paper on top, I've got dirty hands from the charcoal, so even that alone is picking up, getting quite a nice rubbing just from my fingers, so who knows, I might experiment with that in a second. I'll peel that off. Okay, it's not perfect, I've probably got a bit too much ink, but I really like the effect of how that ink has just sat on those leaves and some of those leaves that I've picked up from there. So I might give that a go, try and create a larger one of those now that I know it's sort of working. I was quite pleased with how the outcome came out. So I ended up trying it with a few different objects, with a bit of rosemary as well, and I got some quite nice prints. I even layered up the same bit over and over again to create almost more of a bush from it. But if you don't have any watercolours at home, don't worry about it. You might have some acrylic paint. You might even try and see what happens if you water down some emulsion that you might have in your garage or shed. Use what's accessible to you at home. Other things I thought about that might be quite nice to do is using spray paint, for example. And you could put some of the leaves down on a piece of paper, spray over the top, and get some interesting reliefs from them. So there's lots of different things that you could experiment with here, but I think the real emphasis is be experimental, playful, try things. Don't worry about what the outcome's going to be. Some of mine were complete disasters, but some of them were the start of a little idea that I could progress further.